The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, they looked up at the night sky and wondered what waited for them in the darkness between worlds. They built telescopes. They sent probes. They dreamed of the day they would finally leave their small blue planet and join whatever civilizations existed among those distant lights. But before that dream could come true, humanity almost died. 300 years ago, astronomers detected an asteroid the size of a small moon. It was coming straight for Earth. The calculations were clear and terrible. In 18 months, the rock would strike the planet. The impact would kill everything. Every city would burn. Every ocean would boil. 8 billion people would die, and there was nothing humanity could do to stop it. They tried everything. They launched nuclear weapons at the asteroid. The explosions did nothing. They sent spacecraft to push it off course. The machines failed. World leaders made speeches about hope and survival, but everyone knew the truth. Humanity was going to end. Then the strangers came. They arrived in ships that moved like nothing humans had ever seen. They did not ask for permission. They did not explain who they were or where they came from. They simply appeared, positioned themselves around the asteroid, and pushed it away from Earth with technology that looked like magic. When the danger passed, one of the alien ships approached Earth and sent a single message in every human language at once. The message was short and simple. Grow, become worthy. Then they left. They vanished into the darkness between stars and never returned. Humanity did not even learn their name until decades later, when the first human explorers reached the outer edges of known space and found ancient records left behind by dying civilizations. The strangers were called They were part of something called the Conquered, an alliance of 7 intelligent species that had existed for thousands of years, and they had saved Earth without asking for anything in return. Humanity never forgot. 3 centuries passed. Humans spread across their solar system. They built cities on Mars and stations around Jupiter. They invented faster-than-light travel and began exploring the galaxy. They created the Terran Republic, a government that united all of humanity under one flag. And in every school, every military academy, every government building, children learned the story of They saved us, we owe them everything. Captain stood on the bridge of the United Earth ship Resolve and watched the stars stream past. She was 34 years old, born on a colony world, trained at the Terran Naval Academy, and chosen to lead humanity's first expedition beyond the Outer Rim. It was the greatest honor of her life. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant, stood beside her. He was a quiet man with a perfect memory who never forgot anything he read or heard. Some people found him cold but knew better, simply showed his feelings through actions instead of words. Behind them, Chief Engineer worked at her console. She was the youngest senior officer on the ship, promoted because of her strange talent for fixing problems that should have been impossible. When systems failed, found solutions that no textbook described. The Resolve had been traveling for 6 months. They were farther from Earth than any human had ever gone. The mission was simple: explore, document, and report. Find out what waited in the unknown regions of the galaxy. Then the distress signal arrived. "Captain," said, his voice calm but urgent, "I am detecting a transmission on an unknown frequency. The pattern matches nothing in our database, but the mathematical structure suggests it is artificial." Turn to face him, Origin. A small system approximately 4 light-years from our current position. The signal is weak and degrading. Whatever sent it is dying. Considered the situation. Their orders were to explore and observe, not to engage with unknown contacts, but something about the signal pulled at her. "Can you clean up the transmission? Give me something to work with." The engineer's fingers danced across her console. Seconds passed. Then's face went pale. "Captain, I matched the frequency pattern against historical archives. This signal uses the same encoding method as the message sent to Earth 300 years ago. The bridge went silent. Spoke first, the signal is. Did not hesitate, set a course, maximum speed. The resolve arrived at the system 4 hours later. They found only debris, the shattered remains of spacecraft that had been beautiful once, graceful vessels designed by beings who valued art as much as function. Now they were torn metal and frozen bodies drifting in the void. At the center of the wreckage, a single escape pod still had power. Led the recovery team herself. They brought the pod aboard and opened it carefully. Inside, they found a creature unlike anything humans had ever seen. It had 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with each breath. Its eyes were large and dark and filled with pain. It was dying. Even without medical knowledge of its species could see that. "Human," the creature whispered. Its voice was thin and weak. "You came. After so long you came." Knelt beside it. "We received your signal. What happened here? Who did this?" The elder reached out with one trembling hand and touched its face. Its skin felt like warm silk. "The hegemony," it said. "They have been hunting us for 200 years. One by one they conquered the conquered species, enslaved them, destroyed them. We are the last. They are almost gone." Felt her heart break. The beings who had saved her entire species were dying, murdered by an empire she had never heard of. "Where is the hegemony now?" she asked. "Everywhere. They rule half the galaxy. They are coming for you too, young species. They will find Earth eventually. They always find everyone." The elder's breathing grew weaker. Its colors began to fade. "We saved you," it whispered. "Long ago. We saved your world because we believed you could become something wonderful. Were we right?" Took the elder's hand in both of hers. "Yes, you were right." The smiled, or made a motion that seemed like a smile. Then it closed its eyes and stopped breathing. Stood slowly. Her crew watched her in silence, and every officer on the bridge waited to see what their captain would do. "Open a channel to Earth Command," said. Her voice was steady. "Tell them what we found. Tell them they are dying. Tell them the hegemony is responsible." She looked out at the stars, at the infinite darkness where an evil empire waited. "And tell them it is time to repay our debt." Hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species. They had destroyed civilizations that existed before their ancestors learned to use fire. They knew everything about war, everything about power, and everything about fear. They knew nothing about humans. When the first reports arrived at Hegemony Intelligence Command, the analysts laughed. A new species had entered conquered space. Impossible. The conquered was dead. They were extinct or scattered. There was nothing left worth protecting. But the reports kept coming. Strange ships with ugly, blocky designs. Radio signals in unknown languages. A distress beacon answered by creatures that matched no known species in the database. A junior analyst finally found the entry. Humans. Origin planet designated Sol 3, also known as Earth. The file was old and incomplete, written centuries ago by a survey team that had passed through the system briefly. The analyst read the planetary data and frowned. Sol 3 was classified as a Class 12 world. The gravity was crushing, nearly 10 times standard. The atmosphere contained a corrosive gas called oxygen that would kill most species within minutes. The surface was covered in liquid water, a substance so dangerous that contact with skin caused cellular damage in dozens of known life forms. The planet experienced constant temperature extremes, violent storms, seismic activity, and radiation bombardment from its unstable star. The local wildlife was worse. Predators that hunted by sensing heat, plants that produced deadly toxins, microscopic organisms that invaded bodies and consumed them from within. Class 12 worlds were called for good reason. Nothing intelligent could evolve on such a planet. Nothing could survive there long enough to build a civilization. The analyst marked the file as a clerical error and sent the report to his superior with a note, "Likely misidentification. Request clarification." His superior ignored it. The hegemony had more important matters to consider. This was their first mistake. Fleet Admiral stood on the command deck of the Terran battleship Iron Will and watched his fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel. 200 warships spread across the darkness like an iron fist opening. Behind them, transport vessels carried 50,000 soldiers, Marines trained from childhood to fight in conditions that would kill any other species in the galaxy. Was 60 years old. He had white hair, a face and eyes that had seen too much death. He had fought in 3 colonial rebellions and 2 border wars. He had buried friends and executed enemies. He had never lost a battle. But he had never fought aliens before. None of them had. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are detecting hegemony vessels in orbit around the 4th planet, 37 ships. They are hailing us." "Put it through." The flickered and saw his first hegemony soldier. The creature was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. It wore elaborate armor decorated with symbols that probably meant something important. "Unknown vessels," the alien said. "You have entered hegemony space. Identify yourselves and surrender immediately. Resistance will result in your destruction." Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. "I am Fleet Admiral of the Terran Republic. You are in orbit around a colony world. They are under our protection. You will withdraw immediately, or we will destroy you." The hegemony commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "You threaten the hegemony. We have conquered 1,000 species. We have burned 1,000 worlds. You are nothing. You are insects." "We are humans," said, "and you killed our friends." He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "All ships attack formation, weapons free." The battle lasted 6 hours. The hegemony fought with confidence at first. Their ships were fast and elegant, designed for quick strikes and overwhelming firepower. They expected the human vessels to break and run after the first exchange. Instead, the humans pushed forward. Hegemony weapons tore into Terran hulls, and the humans kept coming. Explosions ripped through human ships, and the humans kept coming. When the hegemony commanders ordered their vessels to retreat and regroup, the humans followed, matching their speed, cutting off their escape routes. Then the boarding parties arrived. Terran Marines launched themselves across the void in armored pods. They crashed through hegemony hulls and spilled into corridors built for creatures half their mass. The gravity on hegemony ships was light, barely a fraction of Earth's pull. To the aliens, it felt normal. To the humans, it felt like flying. The Marines moved through the enemy ships like nightmares. They were stronger, faster, and harder to kill than anything the hegemony had ever faced. When the aliens used chemical weapons, gases designed to kill entire populations, the humans breathed deep and smiled. Their bodies had evolved on a planet where the very air was poison to most life forms. Hegemony chemicals were barely an inconvenience. By the 3rd hour, the hegemony fleet was in retreat. By the 5th hour, they were dying. By the 6th hour, only wreckage remained. Watched the last enemy ship explode and felt no satisfaction. This was only the beginning. On the planet below, the liberation teams found what remained of the colony. Most of the population was dead, killed in the initial invasion or worked to death in labor camps. But a few hundred survivors huddled in underground shelters, waiting for an end that never came. When the human soldiers opened the shelter doors, they stared at them in disbelief. One of them stepped forward. She was young for her species, with bright colors still flickering across her skin despite the horrors she had witnessed. Her name was, and she had been a junior diplomat before the invasion. Now she was one of the few leaders still alive. "You came," she said, her voice trembling. "The humans came." The Marine sergeant, A woman named removed her helmet so the alien could see her face. "We came, and we're not leaving until the hegemony is gone." Looked at the human, at her brown eyes, her skin, her expression of absolute determination, and felt something she had forgotten was possible. Hope. Across the galaxy, the hegemony's intelligence networks finally began to take the humans seriously. Reports flooded in from the survivors of the battle. The new species was not primitive. They were not weak. They were something far more dangerous. They were evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every moment of every day. Humans had become something that should not exist. They healed from wounds that would kill other species. They adapted to environments that should have been instantly fatal. They fought with a ferocity that suggested they had nothing to lose. And now they were angry. The hegemony's supreme archon, Overlord, read the reports in his throne room and felt an unfamiliar emotion stirring in his chest. For the first time in 3,000 years, the ruler of the hegemony felt fear. Sanctuary Point was not on any map. It existed in the space between stars, hidden in the radiation shadow of a dying sun, protected by technology that bent light and fooled sensors. For 200 years, it had been the last refuge of the conquered, the place where the survivors of 7 conquered species gathered to mourn what they had lost. When the human delegation arrived, they found a station filled with ghosts. Captain stood at the viewport and watched the docking procedure with quiet sadness. The station was enormous, built to hold millions, but the lights were dim in most sections. The corridors echoed with emptiness. The beings who moved through the passages walked with the slow, careful steps of people who had forgotten how to hope. Coordinator served as their guide. Since her rescue from the colony, she had attached herself to the human mission. She explained everything: the history of the conquered, the rise of the hegemony, the long centuries of defeat and despair. "We were 7 species once," said as they walked through a memorial hall filled with holographic images. There were scientists and healers. There were builders. They constructed wonders that lasted for. They lived in ocean worlds and created art that made other species weep with joy. There were philosophers. There were explorers. There were warriors. And the hollow ones. She stopped, her colors dimming with grief. The hollow ones are gone completely. The hegemony destroyed them a century ago. Nothing remains of them except memories. Placed a hand on shoulder. The flinched at the touch. Physical contact between species was rare in the conquered, but did not pull away. "We're here now," said. "Tell me about the council." The Council of Remnants met in a chamber designed for hundreds of representatives. Now, barely 30 beings occupied the space. They represented the scattered survivors of 6 species, each carrying the weight of their dying civilizations. When the humans entered, the council fell silent, felt their eyes on her, alien gazes filled with curiosity, suspicion, and something else. Something that might have been desperate, fragile hope. Admiral stepped forward to address them. "I am Fleet Admiral of the Terran Republic. 300 years ago, your people saved our world. We have come to repay that debt." A representative, an insect-like creature with 6 limbs and compound eyes, made a sound of disbelief. "Repay it how? The hegemony controls half the galaxy. They have fleets beyond counting, armies without end. What can one species do against such power?" "One species can do what the conquered forgot how to do," replied. "Fight back." The council erupted in argument. Some demanded that the humans leave before the hegemony discovered Sanctuary Point. Others wanted to negotiate, to offer the humans as tribute in exchange for mercy. A few sat in silent despair, too broken to speak at all. Then a new voice cut through the chaos. "Let her speak." Everyone turned. Ambassador stood at the back of the chamber, waiting. She was 50 years old, gray-haired, with a face that showed the marks of a difficult life. Before becoming a diplomat, she had been a refugee, one of millions displaced during the colonial rebellions. She knew what it meant to lose everything. The council quieted, walked slowly to the center of the chamber, and looked at each representative in turn. "You think we don't understand," she said. "You think humans are naive children who have never known suffering. You are wrong." She touched a control on her wrist, and holographic images appeared around her. Images of human history. "We have burned our own cities. We have enslaved our own people. We have committed genocide against ourselves, not once but many times. We have come so close to extinction that our ancestors could taste the ashes of their own destruction." The images shifted. Wars, famines, plagues, the asteroid that almost ended everything. "We know what it means to lose hope. We know what it means to watch everything you love die. But we also know something else." The images changed again. Rebuilt cities, peace treaties, humans reaching toward the stars. "We know that despair is a choice. We know that surrender is not the only option. We know that as long as one person remains standing, the fight is not over." Turn to face the representative directly. "The hegemony is powerful. They have conquered hundreds of worlds, but they have never faced a species that refuses to break. They have never fought who would rather die than surrender." She spread her arms wide, indicating herself and the human delegation. "We are not asking you to trust us. We are not asking you to believe in victory. We are only asking you to stand beside us, fight with us. If we fail together. But if we succeed—" She smiled, and for a moment her tired face looked young again. "If we succeed, your children will grow up free." The chamber fell silent. For a long moment no one moved. Then the representative rose. The aquatic being's voice bubbled through a translation device. "The will fight. We have hidden long enough." The philosopher stood next. "The will fight. Our wisdom is worthless if we lack the courage to use it." One by one, the representatives rose. Even the despairing lifted their heads and spoke words they had not spoken in generations. "We will fight." Coordinator watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her color-shifting skin. Beside her, Lieutenant observed everything with his perfect memory, recording the moment when hope returned to a dying alliance. In the weeks that followed, Sanctuary Point transformed. Human engineers worked alongside builders to upgrade the station's defenses. Scientists shared their knowledge with Terran researchers. Stealth experts taught human pilots how to move unseen through enemy territory. Warriors, once the Conquered's greatest soldiers, began training with Terran Marines. Admiral and Coordinator spent long hours together, planning the impossible. They analyzed hegemony patrol routes. They identified supply lines. They found weaknesses in the enemy's defenses, small cracks that could be widened with enough force. "This will take years," warned. "The hegemony will not fall easily." Nodded, "Then we fight for years, however long it takes." Studied the human's face, the lines of age, the scars of old battles, the determination in his eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Why do your people care so much about what happens to us? You could stay in your own territory. The hegemony might never find you." Was quiet for a long moment. "When I was a boy," he finally said, "my grandmother told me the story of the asteroid. She told me how they appeared from nowhere, saved our entire species, and vanished without asking for anything in return. I asked her why they did it. Why save strangers they would never meet again?" He turned to look at. "She said that true goodness doesn't ask for reasons. It simply acts. Your ancestors were good to us when we needed it most. Now it's our turn." Had no response. She simply reached out with one four-fingered hand and touched the shoulder, a gesture she had learned from watching the humans. Across the galaxy, the hegemony prepared for war. They did not know that the broken Conquered had found new allies. They did not know that an alliance had been reforged in the darkness. They would learn soon enough. The war lasted 3 years, and every day of it was paid for in blood. The alliance, as the combined forces of humanity and the Conquered came to be called, struck first at the hegemony's outer territories. They hit supply depots and communication stations. They ambushed patrol fleets and vanished before reinforcements arrived. They freed prison worlds and recruited the liberated slaves into their growing army. At first, the hegemony treated them like insects, annoying but insignificant. The Supreme Archon, Overlord, sent small fleets to crush the rebellion. Those fleets did not return. He sent larger fleets. Those fleets came back broken. By the end of the first year, the hegemony understood that something new had entered the galaxy, something they did not know how to fight. Fleet Commander learned the cost of overconfidence at the Battle of Prime. She was young for her rank, promoted quickly because of her talent and her aggression. She led her squadron into what appeared to be an easy victory, a hegemony convoy with minimal escort. It was a trap. Enemy ships emerged from behind asteroids and moons, surrounding her force before she could react. The battle became a slaughter. Watched half her squadron die in the first hour. Ships she had served on, crews she had trained with, friends she had loved, all turned to fire and floating debris. She survived because Lieutenant arrived with reinforcements. His perfect memory had noticed a pattern in hegemony movements that suggested a trap. He came anyway, pushing his engines beyond their limits, arriving just in time to break the enemy formation and extract what remained of his fleet. Never forgot that lesson, neither did the Alliance. They learned to be careful. They learned to verify every piece of intelligence twice. They learned that the hegemony was ancient and cunning and had defeated 100 rebellions before this one. Confidence was good. Arrogance was death. The second year brought the siege of the Nebula Gates, the closest the Alliance came to total defeat. The Nebula Gates were a chain of space stations that controlled access to the core hegemony territories. Admiral committed the entire Alliance fleet to taking them. It should have worked. The intelligence was solid. The plan was sound. But the hegemony had been waiting. Overlord himself commanded the counterattack. His fleet outnumbered the Alliance 3-1. His ships were fresh while the Alliance vessels were exhausted from months of constant fighting. He struck with precision and fury, driving the Alliance back system by system. For 3 weeks, the outcome hung in the balance. Every day brought new casualties. Every night brought emergency repairs and desperate planning. The conquered representatives began talking about retreat, about abandoning the campaign and fleeing to the Galactic Rim. Then Chief Engineer changed everything. She had been studying captured hegemony technology for months, trying to understand how their shields worked. Most engineers said it was impossible. Alien technology based on principles humans didn't understand, didn't care about impossible. She found a weakness, a frequency that the hegemony shields couldn't block. Within days, she had developed a weapon that could penetrate enemy defenses like they weren't there. The first test came against a hegemony battleship that had been terrorizing Alliance supply lines for weeks. One shot from his new weapon and the battleship's shields collapsed. One more shot and the battleship exploded. The Alliance went from losing to winning overnight. By the end of the second year, the Nebula Gates were in Alliance hands. The road to the hegemony's heart was open. The third year was the hardest. Marine Sergeant led a special unit, the only mixed-species commando team in the Alliance. Her soldiers included humans, warriors, engineers, and even an infiltration specialist who could move through water pipes and maintenance tubes that no other species could access. They called themselves the Ghosts, and they did the jobs no one else could do. His team freed prison worlds where millions of slaves waited for death. They assassinated hegemony commanders in their own headquarters. They planted bombs in shipyards and destroyed vessels before they could launch. Every mission was a suicide run. Every success was a miracle. On the planet Vessel 7, found something that changed her forever. The world had been a hegemony breeding facility, a place where slaves were forced to produce children who would become the next generation of laborers. Once team broke through the facility's defenses, they found thousands of young beings from a dozen species, all raised in cages, all trained to believe they were worthless. Looked at them, at their frightened eyes and their bodies and their complete inability to understand that someone had come to save them, and she felt something break inside her heart. "We're taking them all," she told her team, "every single one." The extraction took 6 hours. Hegemony reinforcements arrived twice. Team held them off both times, losing soldiers with each assault. By the end, only half her unit was still alive. But every child made it to safety. Across the galaxy, stories like this. The Alliance wasn't just fighting a war. They were building something new, a future where the hegemony's cruelty would never be repeated. Lieutenant developed tactics that combined human aggression with precision. His strategies confused hegemony commanders who expected their enemies to behave predictably. "The humans don't fight like anyone else," one captured officer complained. "They don't retreat when they should. They don't surrender when they're beaten. They're insane." Smiled when he heard that quote. "Good," he said. "Let them think we're insane. Fear is a weapon too." Captain, now promoted to Vice Admiral, served as right hand throughout the campaign. She coordinated fleet movements, managed logistics, and solved the thousand small problems that threatened to tear the Alliance apart. When human crews argued with conquered crews, mediated. When supplies ran low, found alternatives. When morale crumbled, reminded everyone why they were fighting. "We're not doing this for revenge," she told a group of exhausted soldiers on the eve of a major battle. "We're not doing this because we hate the hegemony. We're doing this because somewhere out there, children are growing up in cages. Because somewhere out there, entire species are being worked to death. Because somewhere out there, beings are suffering and we can stop it." She looked at their tired faces. "That's worth fighting for. That's worth dying for. And if we do this right, that's worth living for too." By the end of the 3rd year, the Alliance had pushed deep into hegemony territory. They had freed dozens of worlds. They had destroyed hundreds of enemy ships. They had proven that the hegemony could be defeated. But Overlord still controlled the core systems. He still commanded the largest fleet in galactic history. He still sat on his throne in the capital world, watching the war approach with cold, ancient eyes. The final battle was coming. Admiral called his senior officers together on the bridge of the Iron Sunrise, humanity's first super-dreadnought, the largest warship the galaxy had ever seen. "The hegemony is gathering everything they have at the Threshold system," he said. 10,000 ships, every resource they can spare. Himself will be there. He's betting everything on one final battle." He looked at each of them in turn. Human and alien, soldier and scientist, united by 3 years of shared sacrifice. "If we win at Threshold, the hegemony falls. If we lose, everything we've built dies with us." Smiled grimly. "So let's not lose." The Threshold system had no planets. It was a crossroads, a place where ancient hyperspace lanes met, where empires had fought and died for, where the fate of the galaxy would be decided once more. When the Alliance fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, Admiral saw the enemy waiting for them. 10,000 hegemony warships spread across the void like a wall of death, battleships the size of small moons, carriers spilling fighters like swarms of angry insects. The combined military might have 3,000 years of conquest, gathered in one place for one purpose: destruction. The Alliance had 4,000 ships. They were outnumbered. They were, by every calculation, they should have lost. Vice Admiral stood beside on the bridge of the Iron Sunrise. She studied the enemy formation with calm eyes. "They're confident," she said. "They think numbers will win this." Nodded. "They're wrong." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Every human soldier, every conquered warrior, every liberated slave who had joined their cause, They all heard his voice. 300 years ago, strangers saved our world. They asked for nothing in return. They simply saw a species about to die and chose to help. Today, we repay that kindness. Today, we fight for everyone the hegemony has hurt. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. He paused. All ships attack. The Battle of Threshold became the largest naval engagement in recorded history. Ships clashed across a solar system. Weapons fire painted the darkness in colors that had no names. Stars were eclipsed by explosions. The void itself seemed to scream with the death of thousands. The hegemony fought with the precision of an ancient machine. Their commanders coordinated perfectly. Their ships moved in formations practiced for centuries. They knew how to win wars. They had been winning them since before humanity learned to write. But they had never fought humans before. The Terran ships pushed forward when they should have retreated. They targeted command vessels instead of easy kills. They sacrificed themselves to protect damaged allies. The hegemony commanders watched their perfect formations dissolve into chaos as the humans refused to follow the rules of war. Lieutenant directed the battle from the Iron Sunrise's tactical center. His perfect memory held the position of every ship, the status of every system, the timing of every maneuver. He saw patterns that others missed. He predicted enemy movements before they happened. Enemy carrier group breaking left, he reported. Redirect 3rd Squadron to intercept. 7, fill the gap. You have an opening on their flank, take it now. Fleet Commander's squadron swept through the gap had identified. They caught a hegemony supply convoy in the crossfire and destroyed it in minutes. Without supplies, the enemy's left flank began to weaken. In the chaos of battle, Chief Engineer worked miracles. When the Iron Sunrise took damage, she rerouted power. When weapons failed, she invented solutions. When a hegemony boarding party breached the hull, she personally led the defense, fighting beside Marines with a plasma torch in one hand and a wrench in the other. Sergeant and her ghosts launched from the Iron Sunrise in a desperate assault on the hegemony flagship. Their mission was impossible: fight through a ship the size of a city and disable its command center. They lost half their team in the first 10 minutes, kept pushing forward. Move, she growled at her surviving soldiers. We didn't come this far to die in a hallway. They reached the flagship's core. They planted their charges. They fought their way back out through corridors filled with enemy bodies. When the charges detonated, the flagship's weapons went dark. But Overlord was not on that ship. The Supreme Archon commanded from a different vessel, a massive dreadnought hidden in the center of the hegemony formation. When his flagship fell, he ordered his personal guard forward. The dreadnought tore through the Alliance lines like a blade through flesh. Its weapons were beyond anything the Alliance had encountered. Its shields absorbed everything they threw at it. Ship after ship fell before its advance. Then it found the Iron Sunrise. The first shot crippled the human super dreadnought's engines. The second destroyed its main weapons. The third punched through its bridge. Admiral was thrown from his command chair. He felt bones break. He felt blood fill his lungs. He looked up and saw the ceiling collapsing, saw fire spreading, saw his life ending. Pulled him from the wreckage. Her face was burned, her arm broken, but she was alive. She dragged him to a secondary command center and propped him against a wall. Admiral, she said, we need orders. Coughed blood, retreat, save the fleet. Looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No. She turned to the surviving crew. All ships, this is Vice Admiral, I am assuming command. All vessels follow the Iron Sunrise. We're going straight at them. The Iron Sunrise was dying. Its engines were ruined. Its weapons were broken. It could barely move. But it could still fly forward. Aimed the crippled super dreadnought directly at Overlord's vessel and gave the order to accelerate. Behind her, every human ship followed. And behind them, inspired by the suicidal charge, every conquered vessel surged forward too. The hegemony formation, built on centuries of careful tactics, could not handle an enemy that did not care about survival. Ships crashed together. Formations collapsed. The careful dance of space combat became a brutal, desperate brawl. The Iron Sunrise reached Dreadnought. It was too damaged to fight, so used it as a weapon. The collision was catastrophic. Both ships shattered. Both crews died. Overlord, the supreme archon of the hegemony, the conqueror of 1,000 worlds, was killed by a damaged human warship that refused to surrender. When the other hegemony commanders saw their leader's ship explode, they panicked. Some tried to retreat. Some turned on each other, old rivalries surfacing in the moment of crisis. The greatest military force in galactic history dissolved into chaos. The Alliance did not let them escape. By the time the battle ended, 3,000 hegemony ships had been destroyed. The survivors fled in every direction, pursued by Alliance hunters. The power that had ruled the galaxy for 3 was broken. The war was over. In the aftermath, the galaxy changed forever. The hegemony collapsed. Its constituent species rose in revolution, overthrowing the masters who had oppressed them for centuries. The territories it had controlled fragmented into 100 independent states, most of which immediately sought alliance with the new power that had defeated their former rulers. The conquered was reborn, not as the fragile alliance it had been before, but as a true union of equals. The 7 surviving species, and the dozens more who had been freed from slavery, came together to build something new. Humanity stood at the center of it all. Coordinator spoke at the founding ceremony of the new conquered. She stood before representatives of 100 species, her colors bright with emotion. 3 centuries ago, we saved a small blue world from destruction. We asked for nothing. We expected nothing. We simply saw a species in need and chose to help. She looked at the human delegation, at Admiral, recovering from his wounds but alive, at Ambassador, who had never stopped believing in the Alliance, at the soldiers and scientists and diplomats who had made victory possible. Today, that world's children have given us everything: our freedom, our future, our hope. They came when we called, even though they owed us nothing. They fought for us, even though we were strangers. They died for us, even though they could have stayed safe in their own territory. His voice trembled. The debt is not repaid. It never can be. Some kindnesses are too great to measure, but now we walk forward together. Now we build a galaxy where no one has to face the darkness alone. The chamber erupted in celebration. 100 species cheered together. 100 languages shouted joy. The galaxy that had known only fear for so long finally knew hope. Fleet Admiral, promoted after the battle, the youngest human to ever hold the rank, watched the ceremony from the edge of the crowd. Beside her stood survivors of a war that had cost them almost everything. "What happens now?" asked. Looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth's sun was shining. Somewhere out there, children were growing up in a galaxy that was finally free. "Now we live," she said. "Now we build. Now we make sure this never happens again." Nodded slowly. They saved us because they believed we could become something wonderful. He looked at the celebrating crowd, at the alliance of species that humanity had helped create. "I think we did." The stars stretched on forever. The darkness was still vast, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with hope. And hope, as humanity had proven, was the most powerful force in the universe.